Hi, I'm Kendall, and this is week 5 of Kendall Writes a Story. So, welcome to my show if this is your first time. If it's not, welcome back. Kendall Writes a Story is about me, Kendall, a mid career professional, writing a story for the first time, and I'm inviting you to come along the journey with me. So, today is week 5. It's also day 1 of our semi reboot that we've talked about in the last couple episodes, and that is where I'm going to set aside the Abram Wade story and instead start on building more fun stories, something really to sink my teeth into for my first try. So, what I've done is I've gone through, I've got 5 stories. Over the next 4 or 5 weeks, we are going to block those out together. And we're going to go starting here in about 30 seconds. We're going to go through the brainstorming process. So today we'll do brainstorming and we'll start laying out what's called the general pitch of the story. And then on Wednesday, for this first story, we are going to start blocking out the scenes, and then on Friday we'll do wrap up and kind of an evaluation of, hey, is this a story we want to write? Is this the story to start with? And if we're super into it, then I'll jump into it. If not, I would like to do it for a couple more stories. So I've got everything queued up. I've got documents, all that ready. But I want to read the story. So what you're about to see is what I've done all weekend. Right? This is Sunday night. I'm recording this, and so to give you a sense of what we're going to end with, here's the story that we're going to brainstorm together right now, and that is this: in the middle of a constitutional crisis, the senator who initiated the crisis, a dangerous ideologue, goes missing. His estranged brother is the only one who knows where he is and how to find them. And so he must go through the city, search through his life and find the senator before it's too late. That's the general gist that we're going to end with. So if you want to kind of see how we got there so that we can do it together moving forward, that's what this video is all about. All right, let's jump in and start brainstorming. So the first thing we want to do, besides get our cup of coffee here, is open up so this is my notebook. This is where I keep all my different story ideas. And so this is where I keep some of the ones that I've fleshed out and the ones that I'm a little into, maybe more so than others. The first thing I want to do is review my prior brainstorming notes. And so that's what this here is. This is actually from a session that I did from a class that I where basically you look at old headlines or even current headlines, just the headlines. You don't read the story, and you let that kind of inspire you, as to what the story is. So there's one on here where there's a headline. It was like, 5th catalytic converter stolen this month in Redwood City. And so obviously I think the regular story is people steal them for money. And so the thought was, dig into that a little bit. So I wrote one. It was like a father whose kid was sick. That was a little outline of a story that I wrote. And so he was a former mechanic who got fired, and so he stole catalytic converters. Right. There was also another sci-fi story that I kind of blocked out real quick in a very loose term, that was about where a time traveler landed here and he needed access to palladium or platinum, whichever is the prevalent precious metal in catalytic converters. And so anyway, so that was a fun little story. So that's kind of what I'm reviewing here, is these different brainstorms that I've done in the past like that, and to see any ideas that really intrigue and interest me. So now so this is actually one of the story ideas that that I'm pretty partial to, and that I've been working on and has been in my head for a while now. And this is probably the exact opposite of the first one that I should share, just because it is so personal to me. But the general idea here, this is based off of an old political theory. The general idea, well, I don't know how. See, I'm very personal. It's something that's very personal to me, so I don't know how much I want to share. But obviously, I have to. So I'll just shut up. I mean, I'll just make that part of myself shut up, and I will keep talking about this story. So the general thought is that it is there's a constitutional convention which to me is one of these things that we think we know something about. The Constitution in general is something I think we know a lot about, and as we found out over the last couple months, or last couple years rather, we certainly do not know a lot about it. There are a lot of things that we are unaware of, and one of those things I think is a constitutional convention, which our Constitution does specifically provide for, and we've never done before. And so, to me, books are these other worlds that you can join, and that you can be in for a little bit, and they don't have to be interdimensional worlds or worlds with like 50 pounds of gold everywhere. They can be worlds just like ours, where those folks explore things that we just haven't explored yet. That's my theory of at least now. I'm sure it'll change, but at least now that's kind of what stories are. They're sort of a laboratory to experiment with our existing world and kind of, think different. Oh, hey, what would happen if this happened? I love escapism just as much, probably more than most folks. I love that, hey, we're getting in a spaceship now, we're going to go to Mars. I love that. But I think what makes stories is, again, that sort of experimental part of like, we're going to take this world that we have with all the rules that it has, and we're going to explore one part of it. So anyway, it's kind of what I want to do here. I want us to explore a constitutional convention together. I want us to explore the foundations of our government together. This is going to be a thriller, and so I read, where this kind of ends up here in a little. I read that at the beginning, but it is a thriller, right? It's basically about this senator who wants to take control of the government, and so he's very charismatic. He has a huge following, and he's able to pull the levers of power so that he can get a constitutional convention. And he's a populist senator, right? He's somebody who is a little right, maybe doesn't have the best of intentions in mind, but definitely is charismatic enough to get a ton of people behind them. So he's able to swing this constitutional convention, and he's able to actually pull some interesting suggestions. Now, I don't know what those are, actually. I don't know, is he gonna try to end term limits? Is it something, kind of small like that? He's gonna end presidential term limits so he can run for president, run forever? Is it gonna be something sort of small that we don't understand at first? Why are they having this constitutional convention to change this one word? And then the book helps us figure out why, something so seemingly benign is so important. That's one route we could take. I'm not sure, and hopefully you can tell that the overall gist of the story, whatever the actual threat is not important. That's the MacGuffin, right? So it will be fun to kind of toy around and see what that threat will be, because that's something that we together, if you're watching and want to be a part of this process, we can be creative about, right? What is it? And that's the fun part in writing, because you can just sort of kind of make things up as long as it's believable, right? As long as it makes sense. So that'll be a fun part, I think, sussing out how, what kind of threats are there in constitutional conventions, and how blunt of an evil person is this person. So that's the general gist, at least, of the conflict coming. Now, the protagonist, right now I have him as sort of a down and out. He's the brother of like a chief of staff of this senator or the president, perhaps. So the chief of staff goes missing. That's what starts this whole thing, at least in my mind right now. As we develop the story, we'll see if that sticks or not. But so far, that's kind of what I'm thinking, is that some high-level person who's making this constitutional convention happen ends up missing, and so they bring in a long-lost relative to help find them. Maybe this person reaches out to the brother like the night before and says, "Hey," and gives him a clue, and that's what starts all this. I mean, that seems like a good way to start. So anyway, so that's the general gist, right? We have this guy. And I'm thinking of making him like a down and out tour guide too in Washington, just because I was a walking tour guide for a little bit, and that's something that interests me, at least that I can start with. So I might do something like that just to kind of make it fun. When's the last time you read a story about a tour guide? But he turns into a sort of Dan Brown style, or at least in my mind, this sort of Dan Brown style gets pulled into this big conspiracy, this big situation, and has to figure it out. So anyway, that's kind of the thought of this story and sort of where I want it to go, and at least initially. And what I love is, as we're building out over this week, we're going to focus on this story. So we're going to start building out. You'll see that I'm already kind of building out the different characters and building out different variations of what can happen and maybe what should happen. But next episode, we'll be focused on what's called blocking. So we'll actually divide up, and I'll do that here in a second. You'll see me pull out a sheet and start dividing it up into 4 different pieces, where we'll write out the high concept idea, which is that statement I read at the beginning and the one I'm writing. We'll write out that high concept idea, and then we'll break down the story into its beginning, middle, and end parts. And that's what we're going to do on Wednesday. And there's a technique that I use from the story grid that's pretty quite simple. It's just 5 points in each of those 3 sections. So next Wednesday, we'll fill out this sheet with basically 15 points. And that'll be the general outline of the story. We'll outline the beginning, the middle, and the end, and the 5 points in each of those. And we should have a pretty cohesive story by the end of Wednesday. So anyway, that's what we're aiming for. That's what we're gearing for. We hope you joined along. If you'd like to stay up to date, in case you don't miss that, make sure you subscribe and hit the little bell right below our screen here. That way you get a notification when we post a new video so that you can see it as soon as you would like to see it. All right. Thanks, everybody. As always, keep masked when you're within 6 feet of people that you do not live with. Stay safe out there. Be kind to one another and to the people around you. All right. Take care.